Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock here in Fiji, and we just want to say thank you very much for all those who have registered to this virtual event as we celebrate the mainstreaming of biodiversity or the CBD International Day for Conservation and Biodiversity. And the theme for this virtual event is on mainstreaming of biodiversity into the economic sectors. Event is hosted by the IUCN Oceania Regional Office. It is part of one of our programs, the BioDev program, which is a assessment here in Fiji as part of our international program to look at the assessing the threats and how we can address some of the threats of economic sectors to biodiversity. We'll move right into the program as we have a full program this morning, but just to thank you for all the registration, I will now invite Reverend James Bhagwan, first of all, to thank him. He was with us yesterday, and for him just to do a devotion for us. As we all know, in the Pacific, spirituality is very much part of our daily lives and the biodiversity work that we do in the region. Reverend James Bhagwan, please.
Vinaka Etika, Nisambul Vinaka to you all. Kia ora, Anna. Good to see you on Zoom today. And greetings to you all, people of the land, the sea, and the sky as we consider biodiversity. let me begin by reading from the book of Psalms, a song that praises God. Praise the Lord, my soul. Lord, my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. The Lord wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a net and lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters. He rides the clouds, his chariot, and rides on the wings of the wind. He makes the winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundation, it can never be moved. He covered it with the watery depths as with a garment. Waters stood above mountains, but at your rebuke the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder they took to flight. They flowed over the mountains, they went down into the valleys, to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary that they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. He makes springs pour water into the ravines. It flows between the mountains. They give water to all the beasts of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the sky nest by their waters. They sing among the branches. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. The land is satisfied by the fruit of his work. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for the people to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth, wine that gladdens human hearts, oil to make their faces shine, and bread that sustains their hearts. The trees of the Lord are well watered, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. There birds make their nests. The stork has its home in the junipers. The high mountains belong to the wild goats, and the crags are a refuge for the hyrax. He made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to go down. You bring darkness, it becomes night, and all the beasts of the forest prowl. The lions roar for their prey, they seek food from God. The sun rises, and they steal away and return and lie down in their dens. Then people go out to their work, to labor until evening. How many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. There is the sea, vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both large and small. Their ships go to and fro, and Leviathan, which you formed to frolic there. All creatures look to you to give them their food at the proper time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. When you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to dust. When you send your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the ground. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. He who looks at the earth and it trembles, who touches the mountains and they smoke. I will sing to the Lord all my life. I will sing praise to my God as long as I live. May my meditation be pleasing to him as I rejoice in the Lord. Praise the Lord, my soul. Praise the Lord. This psalm, this song, reminds us of just how big creation is. When we talk about biodiversity, just how diverse it is, how full of life it is. Last night I was in a meeting of religious leaders, or early this morning, religious leaders from around the world preparing a statement of faith leaders for COP26. And in one of our reflections, we were asked to picture in our mind what biodiversity looks like. When you hear the word biodiversity, just either close your eyes for a short moment or just picture in your mind what is the image that comes to mind of biodiversity. And depending on what part of environmental or conservation work you are involved in, you will have different images come to mind. When I did this exercise early this morning, I saw Lothala Bay, where I go stand-up paddling most mornings. And it was an interesting response from the person who asked the question. He said, "Did you see any humans in this image of biodiversity?" And the answer for most people was no, we just saw creation, we saw land and sea, we didn't see ourselves. And that perhaps is a challenge for us as we consider the issue of biodiversity and our place in it. We often see ourselves as removed from biodiversity, that it is something and we are separate from it. And this perhaps is the challenge for us as we focus on biodiversity day to day, but also with the theme that you have of mainstreaming biodiversity into the economic sectors. And that perhaps is an important thing for us to consider, because for us from the Pacific in particular, we see ourselves as part of creation, part of what we in the Pacific Conference of Churches call the household of God. This is not a house that has been built. This is a house whose foundations are the roots of the trees, whose floors are the earth and the ocean, whose walls are the trunks of trees, whose roof is the clouds. This is our home. And one of the challenges that we continue to face when we talk about biodiversity and we are removed from it is that we have forgotten that the sacred bonds that bound us together have been severed. In the Greek word for household, that is quite common in Christian theology, the word is oikos, and that also translates as meaning the whole inhabited earth. But from oikos, as some of you may know from my previous sharings with you, you get oikos nomos, translated as economy. Oikos logos, translated as ecology. And oiku mene, translated as ecumenicity, us working together. There is a need for us to remember that economics is not just one part of or the whole question, that ecology, economics, and our human place in the whole inhabited earth is part of that household. And in this time where we need to look and see what is happening with the natural world, to protect our biodiversity, and to encourage those in business to be gentle, to live as our ancestors did in only taking what is needed and returning. There is a saying that every seed that is planted is a gift from God to the planet. And the movement of every tree that you have planted is a prayer for you. So maybe today, and I remember during the lockdown, I saw pictures of the IUCN staff planting trees. It is my prayer that those trees, as they move in the wind, will pray for you as they nurture this planet. So friends, with that short reflection, I invite us just to pause for a moment. I will share a prayer that I shared yesterday for the meeting of culture and nature. So please join me in prayer. Creating, redeeming, and sustaining God, you who know each tree and plant from seed to root to fruit, you who know the cells of each living being, in the different ways we feel your presence and experience you. We thank you for this gathering, weaving together all living beings through modern and ancient science, policy, and indigenous wisdom. We pray for the flourishing of all life, what we know, what we can touch, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can smell, and for that which is microscopic. We pray for the flourishing of the seen and the unseen world, for that which is personal or communal value for food, for shelter, clothing, and that which is sacred because it is part of the intricate and beautiful web of life that is meant to be very good. Forgive our ignorance and our selfishness towards the diversity of life. Forgive our manipulation of biodiversity and culture and faith for selfish purposes. As we gather today to celebrate this day of creation, biodiversity, guide the Talanoa today to weave a strong net that will continue to safeguard all life, but particularly that which is most vulnerable. Empower us, O God, to protect this world that is our home. Fill us with your life-giving, life-affirming spirit. Fill us with love and compassion for all creation. I pray this in the name of the resurrected and ascended Savior of the cosmos, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Naka.
Thank you very much, Reverend James. Thank you for sharing the beautiful song that shared from the scriptures and the prayers. Again, our sincere appreciation on behalf of all of the participants and praying for the achievement of the objective of the meeting today. If I may, I will go right to invite Mr. Mason Smith, our Regional Director of Oceania. We are grateful the topic aligns very well with Mr. Smith's background, who has worked in the economic sectors, was Permanent Secretary for Agriculture. So we are so grateful that he has joined the conservation family as the Regional Director for IUCN. So without further ado, Mr. Mason Smith, can you please say words of welcome?
Thank you, Etika. Buluvinaka, everyone, welcome. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this virtual session as we celebrate International Day of Biological Diversity. As you know, the theme for this year's celebration is "We are part of the solution." And your presence is indeed proof that you value biodiversity and that you will be part of the solution to the many and varied challenges to biodiversity. Allow me at this stage to thank the good Padre for his devotion and reflections this morning. No doubt this has set the scene and laid a good foundation for the speakers that will follow. I also wish to acknowledge the presence of IUCN's Vice President and Oceania Regional Councillor, Ms. Tiraa from the Cook Islands, who will provide opening remarks shortly. Kia ora Ana, and welcome to this virtual event. Colleagues, as you know, most of the region's biodiversity is unique to Oceania, and many of the species are not found anywhere else in the world. Yet this very rich diversity of the Pacific Islands and the ecosystem supporting it are now at risk and is constantly under pressure from all sectors. As you know, the main threats to biodiversity is economic development and mostly human-induced. Threats include overfishing and exploitation, pollution through agriculture and industrial wastes, urbanization, agriculture development, species introduction, amongst others. Whilst we perhaps understand the threat and challenges to biodiversity, we also have the knowledge and tools to address these threats and challenges. And this morning, colleagues, we have a good lineup of speakers who are themselves experienced and knowledgeable in their respective fields. So please remain connected and engaged, and do make the most of the Q&A sessions. I take this time to also thank them for their contributions this morning. Allow me to close by thanking Taveuni, Etika, and the team for pulling this event together, despite the challenges posed from working from home and the recent lockdown here in Fiji. So with those few words, please sit back, relax, enjoy the session. And I hope that at the end of the event, you'll be inspired to be part of the solution.
Mason, appreciate the re-emphasis of the the theme of our meeting and setting the stage and calling on individuals to be part of the solution as the theme of today. I will move right to Anna Tiraa. Thank you, Mason. Now, here's welcome, Anna. Anna is a well-known friend and partner in conservation here in the region. As the Vice President for IUCN and a counselor from the region. Anna, thank you very much for your time this morning. And we're looking forward to your opening remarks. So without further ado, I'll hand over the mic and the camera if you can. I think you also are playing a video for us.
Thank you very much, Itika. I'm just wondering if you are able to hear me very well. Our internet connection seems a little bit unstable, but I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, Anna, from Fiji, we can hear you very well.
Thank you. Kia ora ana tātou katoa toa. My name is Anna Tiraa, and apart from being on the IUCN Council, I work for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Management within the Cook Islands. Let me begin by taking you on a journey, a nature journey. If you are sitting on a chair, sit tall. Take 2 deep breaths by inhaling through the nose. So let's begin. Let's inhale. Hold for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Inhale deeply. Hold. Exhale. Sitting tall, I want you to breathe naturally. When I say naturally, we will inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. Make yourself comfortable on your chair. Sit tall, hand on the table or hand on the lap. Your feet firmly planted on the floor. And now I would like you to please close your eyes. Don't be shy. Keep your eyes closed until we finish this beautiful journey. And do not forget to breathe throughout. This journey is 10 minutes with nature near the ocean in the village of Matapera, Rarotonga. Hues of aquamarine and patches of dark blue. Frothy top crests of waves rolling and crashing against the reef with a deep booming noise. The twisting waves spinning and turning to cleanse the sea. Coral boulders protruding from the lagoon floor. Like carvings of a turtle shell, not one, but many. Sea creatures taking comfort by sheltering amongst these sculptures. Green shades of algae sustaining animals symbiotically reliant on each other. The sun rays gleaming through minute droplets to form a rainbow beyond the horizon. The tough trade winds skimming the ocean's surface. Salt spray lashes through the air, landing on whatever is in its pathway. Coconut husks dotted among the coral rocks along the foreshore. Our eyes scan the ugliness. Plastic bottles, jandals, polystyrene strewn on the dry land that is soon encountered by the tide. The edges of the waves moving further. In to slurp them away into the depths of the ocean where it soon disappears. To resurface to hurt sea creatures or to be washed up someplace else. The slender neck and long beak of the white reef heron stylishly moving, preying on its food in the lagoonal waters. The tree of life, the coconut swaying and flexing with the direction of the wind. The heart-shaped leaf of the sprawling native vine on the coral rocks on shore, with its attached funneled lilac flower striking amongst the green leaves. The hovering insects above the shrubbery synchronized in flight, gazing to land where the razor-sharp ridges of the majestic mountains glimmers. These ridges where ancestors once crossed boundaries into neighboring villages. The sun rays casting shadows on the floor between Te Manga and Ikurani. The birds and the tinkle music of the flowing water swathed by the greenery. For in nature we are blessed with love and sustenance. Please open your eyes. When I was a student at the Suva USP campus, I will never forget a message from one of my lecturers. Many of you will know Professor Randy Thaman. These words, given nearly 30 years ago, still hold true to this very day. Nature and biodiversity are our capital in the bank. The services that nature and its biodiversity provides for our planet are crucial for our survival. If you overdraw on your capital, you are in debt to nature. By mainstreaming biodiversity into economic sectors, you are investing in our future health and wealth. Thank you. And I did send a video clip to, is it possible to put the video up? I hope I'm still online.
Yes, you
I
are.
will go ahead and share it now.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, if that's not possible then.
Yeah, sorry, Anna,
Okay. All right, so that video I wanted to show you was actually site
what do you think the video is sharing?
where was standing and where the word came from.
Let me restart it.
Lines and mountains. It's okay, Itika, you can stop there now, but I just wanted to paint a picture
Okay.
and I wanted to show you where that picture came from. But I will, with these opening remarks, I welcome you all to this Zoom call and thank you for very much for allowing me to participate. Thank you. Over to you, Itika.
Naka. Now, valuable Anna, thank you very much for sharing with us this morning. It's good to hear some of your memories from here in Suva and our good friend Professor Randy Thaman. Thank you very much for Reverend James, Mason, and Anna for officiating the opening part of this virtual meeting. So thank you very much. We'll move right into the sessions at this stage. But before that, if I could just quickly run through the program of the day again. I could share this. I hope you're seeing my screen. We received almost 100 registration for participants, and I've listed there the countries that have registered from Solomon Islands, big number from Fiji, Samoa, apologies, there's missing A there, South Africa, Switzerland, Vanuatu, PNG, Australia, New Zealand, and with a lot of our academia, the University of South Pacific and other national universities, thanks to the government representative across the region and Fiji, the NGOs, special acknowledgement to some of the donors that are also part of our session this morning, like EU, our development partners. Good to see some volunteer groups and youth groups. And of course, I've already mentioned Australia and New Zealand. Just some few reminders before we pass the microphone to the speakers. Please turn off your microphones after your interventions. In terms of the discussion, after every session, we are asking that if you could send your question via the chat in the Zoom, and our team will have a quick review of those questions, and they will choose one or two for our general discussion. If the speakers also, please turn on your camera so that we could look at you while you're doing your presentation. We've done the welcome bit of the program. Just briefly, the session, we are still on time. We planned for 9:30 start. We do have a full session of speakers, and I can see that the Teitei Taveuni are ready to go on their camera with Peter. So they will do the first session on mainstreaming for sustainable agriculture, the agriculture sector. And then we'll hear from the sustainable fishing with Sea Change, some of the successes in addressing some unsustainable fishing topics in here in Fiji, and grateful that we have one of our favorite McDonald's representative here in Fiji to talk about management of solution management and pollution control. Also a special acknowledgement to the Permanent Secretary for Ministry of Environment, Mr. Joshua Wycliffe, and the South Pacific Waste Recyclers, Ms. Ragni Pratap. And then we'll finish off with the session 4, thanks to the Ministry of Forestry, Ms. Sanjana Lal. I think Sue is standing in for the talk this morning, and Marigeti Fiji, Nature Fiji, Marigeti Viti, Thomas, and welcome to the Fiji Pine, Asiana Hazan. So to participants, thank you again. We'll move straight to the speakers. If I may invite Teitei Taveuni to do the presentation. We're looking at 10 minutes for each presentation, and then please send in your request. And after each session, we'll open it up for questions and discussion. If I may invite Mr. Peter Kjaer and Alan from Teitei Taveuni.
President, your photo should come up there. Okay. I just start now, or are they going to change the picture? They're supposed to change that.
Hear you, Peter, so you could make a start.
Okay. Okay. See, yeah, we have been asked to talk about what Teitei Taveuni have done in terms of sustainable agriculture practices whilst protecting our biodiversity. And we're going to reply to it in two parts. First, I will shortly explain how we got to our whole stand on biodiversity over some projects, and then Alan will in the second part will talk about the model farms and where we how we practice it today. Yeah, and then. Just to say for a start, Teitei Taveuni was founded in 2009 by farmers and for farmers to find solutions to the declining dalo production, which was caused by declining soil fertility at the time where it was recognized. Another thing before we start, we could not have done all this if we not had got support and funding from the Ministry of Agriculture, SPC, UNDP Small Grants Project, Organic Matter Foundation from Australia, ORSAID, Australian Volunteers International, Asia, PFON, POETCOM, and here in the end from FAO. Our first attempt to deal with the problems was the soil schools, where we, together with Organic Matter Foundations, made courses for farmers on how to do biological farming, which was based on that we have to work with the life in the soil if we wanted to rebuild our soils on Taveuni. We did 8 modules of 2 days courses. We had for about 200 farmers over a period of 2 years. The message of the soil schools was that soil life is essential for a functioning soil. And if we wanted to be successful farmers, then we have to work with nature instead of against it. The second one was that we had to know what was actually in the soils. And we were told that conventional NPK farming with high salt index fertilizers basically kill off the soils and degrade the soils. So in hindsight, what we can conclude in regards to biodiversity was 3 things. That we realized that we have to include what we can see above the ground, But just as important, we have to include all the things that we cannot see below the ground and actually also around us. And then we need the mineral composition to actually obtain. So our first realization was that that biodiversity or soil life is very important for farmers. The second project that I'll mention is the Soil Health Project, which was an Asia soil research project, working again on declining soil fertility on Taveuni, plus in Australia, plus in Samoa, plus in Kiribati. Again, as what we got out of the how should I say? Part of the project was that Teitei Taveuni got an AVA volunteer who went around and mentored 40 farm groups, or around 300 farmers, over a period of 3 years to implement some of the lessons from the soil schools and to communicate or be the link between the research and the farmers for the Soil Health Project. What we got out of the Soil Health Project, in regards to, we got solid data from a lot of the trials on and lab work on how the combination of cover crops or soil life or what was growing and what was now growing, how the what we could see above the ground had to do with what happened below the ground and what changes occurred. And then we got information on how, for example, mucuna crops could create a wider diversity or variety of soil life instead of cropping the same crops all the time. We got the same out of the banana trials in Queensland, where it was documented how the whole nematode thing changed around when you went in and did cover crops with brassica. So what you can say in regards to biodiversity that we got out of it afterwards were that there is a symbiotic relationship with what we can see, which is growing and living above the ground, and what is actually under the ground. And if we are going to build through diversity, then we have to pay attention to both. Okay, the last thing I'll mention is that after the Soil Health Project, we got funding from Orsate and started up the Farmers Resource Center on Taveuni. We have been running, that's now Teitei Taveuni's home. We run courses for farmers. We sell fertilizers, which is suitable for rebuilding soil instead of degrading them, and which much of it comes out of the recommendation from the Soil Health Project. And then we use them for doing workshops. For example, Mary Cole on soil biology and compost. She's an Australian who have lots of experience. Ranadi Plantation did courses on permaculture. PFON, which is Pacific Island Farmers Organizations Network, which Teitei Taveuni is part of, did the soil symposium on Taveuni, where we invited all the participants for all the Pacific Island to 2 days down at Tutu Training Center, where we discussed and told where we were with all this biological farming. We also with POETCOM made a trip to Cuba, where two persons from Teitei Taveuni went and 2 persons from Custom Garden in the Solomons went to study and to look at how they do organic organic agriculture, and then bring the principles back. We have had farmers for our lead farmers or whatever. And all this has, within the last 5 years, materialized into an understanding that we need, so if we are going to rebuild soils, and if we are going to make sustainable farming, then it's not a matter of just protecting biodiversity. Biodiversity is simply an essential component on rebuilding soils. There's been done a lot of research by Christine Jones in Australia in collaboration with different farmers. You should go in and read on her website, Amazing Carbon. And there is, so it's not, for us, it's not a matter of protecting it. For us, it's an essential component of being able to rebuild soil and do sustainable farming. Huh? And now, so that's where we ended up, where we are today. And now Alan, he will tell you about the model farms itself, which is our latest attempt for actually doing it in practical ways. Huh? Good.
Hello, everybody. Just give you a brief overview of the situation here in Taveuni. Taveuni is the third largest island in Fiji. Farmers farm two main commodities, taro and yangona. Farm sizes average 5 to 10 acres. Over the past 20 to 25 years, farmers have moved from subsistence farming to semi-commercial or commercial farming to supply the ever-increasing need of these two commodities for the local and export market. While farmers have increased, farm management and production techniques have not changed much. This means that farmers are still practicing shifting agriculture, but nowadays they're using more herbicides, weedicides, and a lot of chemical fertilizers. Farmers have found that their lands have become unproductive, and they now start leasing lands from freeholders or itoke farmers. And on these leases, there are no environmental guidelines, so forests have been clear-felled just to plant yangona and dalo, and this has led to land being unproductive over a short period, maybe 2-3 crop cycles. Production costs have gone up because farmers find that they have to use more inputs. And we have come to a stage now where good arable land is hard to find on Taveuni. Now farmers have come to a realization that their production costs have gone up, that the land is not as productive as before, and that they have to do something. We here at Teitei Taveuni, we have come up with a system based on an agroforestry model so that farmers can sustainably farm their land. In 2018, the FAO through AAD project funded us on model farms. We set up 16 model farms to show that these systems is possible. As you know, farmers will only copy what they see happening. If it's successful, then they will follow. Otherwise, it's hard to convince them. So this AAD project, we had 16 farmers. Unfortunately, in 2020, the project was pulled due to COVID-19. But these model farms are based on a diversity. Farmers having diverse income streams, planting diverse crops, intercropping, planting trees, having animals as part of the farming system, and also bees. Now this would enable farmers to not only improve their soil, but also be prepared for the adverse changes in the weather that we are now experiencing. As you know, Taveuni has experienced 2 cyclones recently, 2016. We had
I think we're having a bit of a connection problem there with Alan. Alan, are you still there? Apologies, everyone. I think Alan have dropped off due to internet. We think he has covered enough coverage on their topic, and we hope that he can come back or maybe during a question and answers. So I'm going to move to the next speaker. We are grateful to have the Permanent Secretary for Agriculture, Mr. Ritesh Das. Mr. Ritesh, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And you also bring with you your area of expertise in your academic background and the work of the ministry. So without further ado, Mr. If I may ask to go ahead and do the presentation.
Thank you very much, Tika. Everyone, and greetings from Ministry of Agriculture. Now, I send the presentation through. If that can be put online, otherwise I can try to share it from my end.
Yeah, Mr. Das, if you could share it from your end, please.
Okay, let me see how this works.
If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a green share screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Great. Okay. Excellent. So thank you very much again for giving me the opportunity to talk to the group about biodiversity in agriculture. I'd like to at the moment recognize Peter and Ellen for their informative presentation. Really interesting, and I think the agricultural sector, all the players in the agricultural sector have got a lot to learn from the operation that they run in Taveuni. So thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, let's see. All right. Now, we face two major challenges for the agriculture sector in Fiji, and quite frankly, globally today. One is ecological and the other one is economical. Our basic agricultural assets that people often see and think about as first notion are land, water, the required inputs, and more importantly, the hands that cultivate, which are our farmers, our respected farmers. And conservation of these assets is critical. However, what is more important is that we are committed in the conservation of biodiversity. This, in my view, is a challenge that tops the list today. How do we make agriculture sustainable in practice? We talk a lot about what needs to be done, but how do we take practical, real steps in ensuring that we are actually conserving our biodiversity whilst we are progressively driving agricultural growth in the name of economy and food security? And I must say that it is a challenge. Having said this, I'm of the view that there is no contradiction between productive farming or productive agriculture and rich biodiversity. Sustainability is the core focus for the ministry. As you can see, it is clearly articulated in our vision, mission, and ways of working. While we all recognize it's not an easy road, it is a path we have consciously chosen, and the path we aim to follow as we go along developing a vibrant, progressive, and productive agriculture sector in Fiji. I'm sure you all will agree with me that Fiji outranks many countries with its largely unspoiled habitat and conserved ecosystem, something that we should all be proud of and be consciously working towards to preserve as much as possible. We have to ensure it is kept that way whilst we pursue our growth objectives. And agriculture sector has been noted to be one of those sectors that can impact biodiversity or biological diversity if the practices are not well managed. So what you see here are our 5 strategic priorities, and without a clearly defined and articulated approach, we often find that our priority initiatives, the ones that drive the highest success, are given secondary treatment. The Ministry of Agriculture launched its strategic plan in 2019, and almost sort of midway into it, have achieved significant progress across all areas. And the 5 strategic priorities for us, obviously, the first comes to mind, tops the list, is improve food and nutrition security for all Fijians. Secondly, it's about increasing farmer household income for sustainable livelihoods. Thirdly, it's about improving adoption of sustainable resource management. And this is where biodiversity conservation cuts across our SDPs, which is also linked to the National Development Plan and Strategic Development Goals. We are also looking at establishing and improving commercial agriculture as we try very hard to mitigate the impact that COVID-19 has had on the country and the economy. And all of this cannot be achieved by a vibrant and high-performing public sector performance, which is in the forefront of our objectives. As the ministry aims to achieve its strategic development plan, we also have a key role to play in ensuring that the future that is fairer for our people and more importantly the planet. To do so, we must meet the challenge of producing more sustainably. And as I've said earlier, the pivotal question always remains: how do we produce more food, whether it is food for local domestic nutrition, food and nutrition security, or economic growth, whether it's exports or import substitution driven. We know that globally there has been a decline of agricultural diversity, and that's a fact. In some countries, it's more pronounced than others. Many key components are of biodiversity for food and agriculture at genetic, species, and ecosystem levels are in decline. And evidence does suggest that the proportion of livestock breeds at risk of extinction is increasing, and that for some crops and in some areas, plant diversity in farmers' fields is decreasing, and threats to diversity are increasing. So, if left unchecked, these trends will affect down the track the production, the output that we are seeing from the agriculture sector, potentially creating more problems when it comes to food security, which is why it is important that we pay very close attention to biodiversity and the role that it plays in agriculture. With the challenge of COVID-19, I'm sure you all agree with me, the scale has tipped in the favor of our food systems. Producing more nutritious food, consuming more nutritious food, and really focusing on food security. And every country is actually doing this right now. As this happens, there's a probability that it'll come at the cost of further reduction in biodiversity if close attention is not paid to it. Therefore, it is critical at maintaining the right balance between the growth in agricultural productivity, the demand in increased productivity with the biodiversity conservation. These are some statistics from agriculture. As you can see, it's a chart that's demonstrating growth. Over 80,000 farmers, which has grown by about 28% from previous. We have achieved growth both in volume and value over the last 5 years. Specifically, there has been growth in exports revenue by about 28% in 2020 compared to 2019. That was at the back of a very challenging external environment, or internal environment, I should say, with COVID-19. So the trend is positive, and as we drive these levels of growth, and to ensure these sustainable levels of growth, we have to pay very close attention to sustainability. How do we get these levels of growth year on year at a sustainable level? Now, the most quoted definition of agriculture and biodiversity are provided. If you Google it up, this is what we'll find. Whilst agriculture is primarily an activity, biodiversity, which is derived from the word biological diversity, refers to the natural existence of the variety of life on Earth at all levels. From genes to ecosystems, and can encompass evolutionary, ecological, and cultural process that sustain life. So biodiversity is about life, and the reality is that agriculture depends on biodiversity. I'm sure you all are aware. We celebrated World Bee Day yesterday, 20th of May. And we celebrate Biodiversity Day tomorrow, being the 22nd. The World Bee Day is an event to spread awareness of the significance of bees and other pollinators for our survival. And often people ask, how significant is significant? Did you know that of the 100 globally most used agricultural crops, delivering about 90% of nutrition, 71 are pollinated by bees? So imagine if the bees are taken out of equation, their contribution is withdrawn or damaged, destroyed, or somehow adversely impacted by the work that we do. What will happen? It will inadvertently affect human life. So sustenance of human life depends on the existence of a rich, vibrant, and effective biodiversity, and the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity is not simply an environmental issue, but it is a key requirement for our nutritional needs, our production processes, services, and the overall quality of life. Okay. Now, there are components of agrobiodiversity at play. First is the plant genetic resources, which includes crop, wild plants harvested and managed for food. There's trees on farms, pasture. It also includes animal genetic resources. These constitute the main units of production in agriculture, and include cultivated and domestic species. So Ministry of Agriculture has an organized system in the management of these through conservation of germplasm and use of diversity program, policy support, funding strategy, and regional and international initiatives and support. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a while. Secondly, there are components of biodiversity that support ecosystem services upon which agriculture is based. These include a diverse range of organisms that contribute at various scales to inter alia nutrient cycling, pest and disease regulation, pollination, as we just talked about, pollution, sediment regulation, maintenance of hydrological cycle, erosion control, and climate regulation and carbon sequestration. Abiotic factors, which is the third factor. These are factors such as local climate and chemical factors, and the physical structure and functioning of ecosystems, which have a determining effect on agricultural biodiversity. And fourth is the social, economic, and cultural dimensions. These are largely shaped by human activities and our practices. And we know that a lot of people depend on agricultural biodiversity for sustainable livelihoods. And these often include traditional and local knowledge of agricultural biodiversity, cultural factors and participatory processes. And for Fiji, which is very relevant, something that probably is not explored to the degree that it could be is tourism associated with agricultural landscapes. So biodiversity conservation for sustainability has been mainstreamed in our policies and strategic documents and programs. More work needs to be done, admittedly, across all these areas. In some areas, we've had significant advances. In other areas, we have got the opportunity that's in front of us to ensure that we do not fall in the same trap that some other countries have fallen into in its pursuit for growth. Okay, so some of the activities that we've got in terms of mainstreaming biodiversity. So Ministry of Agriculture ratified the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture in July 2008. It also ratified the UNCCD, UN Convention to Combat Desertification. And both these international instruments are important to MOE, to Ministry of Agriculture, with respect to conservation of biodiversity. The treaty looks at biodiversity conservation and management and use, while UNCCD is relevant to agroforestry and biodiversity restorations, adapting to sustainable land management and land degradation neutrality as a vehicle to achieve our Sustainable Development Goal 15.3, which is life on Earth that can synergize with biodiversity conservation. Ministry of Agriculture is also strengthening budget and policy support for conservation of plant genetic resource for food and agriculture at research stations through ex situ conservation. And this is an ongoing program for Ministry of Agriculture. We also support on-farm conservation of traditional cultivators and in situ conservation of wild crop relatives through farmers training, awareness, and publications. And this is an area that we need to do more work on, raising awareness, showing people how to achieve the right balance in biodiversity and agricultural production. Reference was made by Ellen on organic practices, and organic agriculture practices is something that we as a ministry fully endorse and encourage. As a matter of fact, for more than a year now, Ministry of Agriculture has stopped distributing inorganic inputs, agro inputs to farmers versus what used to be done before. As we believe that this directly contributes to biodiversity conservation or degradation, if not kept in check. There has been success stories such as the one that we've just heard, and more needs to be done across the farming communities. It's easier to use inorganic fertilizers or inputs or chemicals, but there are alternatives available, safer alternatives available that are safe for the ecosystem and our biodiversity. The good news is there's growing intent to go this way. There are methods, established methods. There are success stories, and what we need to do is copy and paste, raise awareness, show that it can be done, and progressively drive the shift organic agro inputs versus using inorganic inputs in agriculture. This is
sorry, Mr. Das, just a kind reminder on the time.
Sure. Yeah. All right. I'm almost the second last slide. So you can see here that we have our security, agriculture, growth, and expansion strategy. Once again, the key here is around what we do is done on a sustainable level. And lastly, I'd like to leave you all with this famous American Indian proverb. That we all have a responsibility in ensuring the conservation of biodiversity. So the actions we take on a daily basis will have an impact on our climate, on our biodiversity, and we don't need to do for us. We need to do that for our generations that are to come. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you, Mr. Das. Thank you to the Taveuni team. I hope you're with us again. We'll just share with the speakers some questions that have come in. I'll start with Mr. Das. Mr. Das, a few questions on cover. What percentage as the cover in relation to the total GDP? I know it's still an informal economic sector there, but if you could just comment on the cover contribution, also the impact of cover farming to biodiversity, the encroachment issue of cover. The second one is if you could just tackle the cover. The other one is on EIA. What are your views in undertaking EIA before clearing for EIA as in environment impact assessment? If you could address those two.
Yep. Okay. So cover is can you hear me? Cover is definitely one of the one of the main commodities for Fiji in terms of the output and the value. Now I know I've got other members from my team who might have specifics in terms of its contribution to the GDP. Sarah. So yeah, so cover exports in 2020 reached about $44 million. So that's the contribution, to that's the direct contribution to our GDP. In terms of cover, it's one of the highest value commodities that we've got, and because of this value, there is growing interest from people to actually get into cover cultivation. We work with our farmers to ensure that their practices are conducted in a way that doesn't impact biodiversity in adverse way. Can I comfortably say that it's always done? No, there are instances when farmers grow potentially without due consideration to the factors such as biodiversity, and that's something that we have to progressively work on in educating them on good agricultural practices, one that actually achieves the growth output that they need, as well as protects our climate, our biodiversity. In terms of cover, last year it had the highest value compared to other produce that was exported. So you can see why there's a growing level of interest and why we need to pay particular attention to this.
And your views on the EIA?
Okay, I think environmental impact assessment is critical, and it often depends on the extent of the activity that needs to be undertaken. So if we talk about, land clearing for agricultural purposes, an EIA, in my view, can inform you fully on the method that can be applied towards achieving your objectives. So if you want to get into commercial agriculture, for example, having done an EIA will inform you how to do that, so that you can protect the climate that you're operating in. Do not destroy the biodiversity that's actually there, because at the end of the day, this will drive the sustainability of that particular venture. Now, some may see that as a nuisance. I see that as an essential integral part of the process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Das. I directly a few discussion questions to our Taveuni. I'm really sorry, my mic was off. So basically, to the Taveuni partners, the upscaling of the Teitei Taveuni model farms, the recommendation on the soil health to assist farmers, very interesting discussion that they brought forward in terms of diversifying farming. I was just asking if the Taveuni team could just talk about some recommendations. How can we upscale model farms in Fiji and the whole improvement of the soil health? Alan or Peter, are you there?
Yeah, okay. What we got after the soil schools, we had lots of opinions about that biological farming was better. What the Soil Health Project gave us was a lot of data backing it up. It also raised a lot of questions which we do not know the answer to. But one of the things, for example, which was a great help for us was that we went in and did a lot of elaborate soil samples, which went all the way to Lismore, down to Southern Cross University, and we got it back with soil samples on what availability, what was actually there, what was non-available, and whatever. And then there was a lot of ratios between some of the readings, which could tell us if the soil was if the soil biology was working and not. There was also lab counts on mostly on nematodes, but also on other species, where they showed that after a mucuna crop, there was a much more diverse and much more accommodating soil biology, and that went a long way to explain why crops were better after a mucuna fallow crop. Another thing was that one of the recommendations which came out of the Soil Health Project was that the best bet was a mix of rock phosphate and fish meal. And if you go in and look at what the taro crop removed from the land and what the input was with the rock phosphate and the fish meal, then you don't get a conclusive answer out of it. But one of the things that you could conclude was that by using the fish meal, you stimulated a lot of soil biology and life in the soil, so that more of what was already there became available for the plants. So a lot of the data, both from the test and from the trials, gave us a more what you call concrete pictures of what is going on. It's because there is tons of studies. As of lately, Poetcom sent me one where it says risk to soil biodiversity on the islands in the South Pacific. But the conclusion on the study is that it may be a problem, but we don't know what we have. And so there is so little information on what is actually available. And so there's a lot of theories on what to do, but we have to try it out on the farms with some scientist which knows what's happening and not, so that we can actually get more concrete knowledge on what's working, because then you can convince farmers. And if not, then it's going to continue. And we got big problems. And so, for example, with the Dalo industry, which more or less wrecked the soils on Taveuni, we have the sugar industry with a fairly low yield, international yield or whatever, and a lot of it is because of the monoculture and because of the lack of attention paid to how you actually maintain soil fertility over the long-term perspective. So the Soil Health Project helped us because it gave us data, and then because as part of it also it supported this AVA volunteer, so that we could actually decimate a lot of it to the different farm groups on Taveuni. And that's a difficult thing to do, because farmers have not mostly a hell of a lot of education, and that means when you tell them phosphorus is good, then you don't get anywhere before you actually set a small trial up which shows you the differences on if you put this and if you put that. It's all a matter of making it concrete for the farmers. And because of the liaison or the combination of the researchers, SPC, Ministry of Agriculture, Teitei, Taveuni, and our farm Australian Volunteer International, then we got a lot of the results out to a lot of farmers and got a little bit further. There's still way to go.
Alan, Peter and Alan, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. It's definitely with the presentation from Mr. Das and Agriculture. I know IUCN is already in the discussion with you, and of course some of the other conservation groups and government. It seems like this topic will have to be taken up into another detailed discussion. It touches everybody's lives every day because of livelihood and the challenge of raising awareness with the farmers. So congratulations to the both speakers and the information that have been shared, which really will need to have much more detailed discussion at all levels. So thank you very much to the speakers and the participants that have shared some of your questions.